Hey, Just As We Are listeners, you guys are in for such an absolute amazing experience. I got to sit down with Julie Ciardi. Julie is a mama to three, former Fortune 500 corporate marketing executive turned multi-passionate entrepreneur. You guys, she's built 3 businesses and a podcast using her marketing formula. While marketing is her zone of genius, her passion is helping moms create and grow their side hustles, network marketing businesses, and more. She believes that we are so much more than mommy. She, in fact, has her own podcast, so go check that podcast out at More Than Mommy. And you can find Julie on Instagram at Julie Ciardi or visit her website in the show notes. Welcome to the Just As We Are podcast. I'm Katrina Lelly, certified life coach, aspiring author, lover of people, mama in recovery, and student of life. Each week, I will bring you love, inspiration, the real life stuff people are afraid to talk about, and guests who are willing to shine their light for you. I give you self-care practices and mindset tips to help you shatter the negative stories you tell yourself. Now is the time to step into the beautiful, loved, whole woman you already are. Let's walk this journey together. Awesome. You guys, welcome back. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am super excited about today's call, today's episode with Julie Ciardi. And I met her a couple of weekends ago at the Mommy Millionaire Live event, which was such a freaking amazing weekend. There was so much growth, so much transformation that happened in that room. And Julie and I met while waiting to get our photos done for our VIP. And there was just something about her that was there was just a spark. So Julie, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for supporting the Just As We Are podcast and jumping on here and sharing with my listeners. I am so glad to have you here.
I am so excited to be here. And I just got the chills up and down both arms when you were just saying that, because it was an epic event. But then 2, I just loved meeting you. And likewise, I felt such a connection with you. You were so vulnerable and open, and you really we're connecting with women in such a powerful way. And I just want to thank you for doing this podcast, because clearly we need more podcasts like this out there for women and for moms especially.
Oh, definitely. I have been, we were talking beforehand, and it is so important to me, especially with the work that I've done and where we've come from. And the more I talk to women, how important it is to talk to one another and let each other know what's going on. Find that tribe you can talk to, that person you can talk to, and share the stuff that you think in your head is just oh my gosh, I cannot say this out loud because people are going to think X, Y, Z. And what you find out is we're all the same. Walking into that room and sharing with you ladies and hearing more of you stand up and be yep, that's me too. Wow. Just wow.
Yeah, I'm getting the full body chills, because we live in a time with social media the way that it is, that everything looks a certain way, and everything looks, people have a certain life, or they've got their stuff together or whatever. And so, yeah, it's nice to look at, but the real beauty in everything is when people get honest. And when you're honest and vulnerable, it is amazing how you open that door for others to do the same. And then you create these connections that last a lifetime, because when it's superficial, it just, you don't have that same connection. But when you get raw and deep and you're honest, bonds form, your DNA starts to combine or something, you just really, right? You just really attach at a whole other level, which is amazing.
Yeah, those defenses come down, those walls start to come down, and you see the woman, you see that woman standing in front of you for exactly who she is. And to even throw this out there, some of the women in there, I totally prejudged. And as soon as they started talking or talking with them, I felt, I don't know, just terrible. This woman is so beautiful. She is so not what I thought she was.
Yes.
and how often that happens every day. I know it does.
Oh, and we all do it. Oh my God.
Yes.
And we all do it. And we even do it without, it's almost subconscious.
Mm-hmm.
It's because it's those like subconscious beliefs and stories that we've had that have developed over time that creep up, and we don't even mean to do it. And we do it without even thinking, and we judge. And that happens all the time. And I have actually just a little bit of advice to your listeners. I have tried to, like, it's easy for me to talk to someone like you and I. It was super easy. Like, it wasn't an
Oh
issue. Like,
yeah.
you're outgoing, I'm outgoing, we're going to talk. But it's sometimes when I prejudge someone as like, use the word snooty, or like someone that just seems like she might be just a bit above everyone else, or just maybe she's being quiet. She's not as approachable, right?
Right.
I have, more often than not, and what I've been trying to do at different events and different things I go to now, like networking events and different live events, is that when I see someone like that, I actually make it a point to proactively go up and talk to that person. And 9 times out of 10, either they're kind of an introvert, they have something going on that they, are shrinking back a little from, or they just didn't want to make the first move. Now we're talking, now we're engaging, we're being real, and I end up like loving the person. So like, we definitely prejudge. It's just in our human DNA, but work through it, because it's amazing what can happen on the other side of it if you try to make those connections.
Yeah. Yeah. That's such good advice and so true. I made me think about early on in my network marketing, being at one of the events. I did that. And Kayla was one of the people that I went up and introduced myself to. And she had no idea who I was, but I made that. And it's so true. The moment we do that, it breaks that stuff down, breaks that stuff away. So
Exactly.
yeah. So tell us a little bit more about yourself. You're a mom. You live in New York. Give us a little bit of who you are.
Yeah. So real quick. So I always grew up in the Northeast. I lived in Boston before living in New York, and kind of that typical boring story of like the do-gooder type A who like, okay, got to do good in school, and I'm going to do what my parents told me. And then I've got to go and get into college and then get the job. And, oh, okay, now I'm supposed to get my graduate degree. Okay. Get my master's, like just on this like path that I thought I was supposed to be on, that I felt like kind of society, my parents, whatever had given to me. And inside all along the whole way, though, I was like, I don't know, like, I feel like there's something else. Like, I always questioned my purpose and why am I here? And like, I always had those things always going through my brain since I was a little kid, but I kept doing what I thought I was supposed to do next. And honestly, I didn't have a ton of examples in my life of someone doing it differently. Everyone in my life did it that way. It was, no, you go to school, you get a job, you work at that same job and for that same company till you retire. And then when you retire, maybe then you can enjoy, some things in life. And I was like, oh, I don't know, this is just not sounding like right to me. And so I, again, even on the personal side, thought I was supposed to get married in my 20s and have the kids, like I really felt like I was on this like biological clock, because I'm older, I'm 45. So even so much has changed in the last like 15, 20 years. But when I was in my 20s, like if you weren't married by 30, like what was going on? Even then, that was not that long ago, ladies. Okay.
No.
So I felt this like pressure, like, get married and have kids. And so I was married and had 2 kids and was on a corporate journey. Like by 30, that was all set, right? 2 kids, married, corporate job. Didn't love the corporate job. Marriage was starting to crumble. And I had 2 kids that I like completely adored and were my world. But in that process, also lost who I was after I had them. Like, can I pursue things that I want? I really got lost in giving everything that I had to them. And so life has a funny way, universe, God, whatever you believe in, has a funny way of kind of being like, making you stop. And in my early 30s, it kind of all came crashing down in that I got divorced. My kids were only 4 and 2, so they were very small. And everything like that I thought my life was supposed to look like was starting to crumble and not be what I thought it was supposed to be. I didn't love my job. So it was kind of like this like whole big crazy thing at like once that came crashing down. And, and then from, and no, we'll get deeper into kind of some of these pieces as we go, but I will just kind of sum up a little bit of kind of what happened after that. Then, I ended up meeting my now husband, so remarried. We ended up having a child together. So I've got a 5-year-old who we had through IVF. And so now we were living in this, blended family, 2 kids with one dad and another with a different, with my current husband, and trying to balance that whole blended family. And in that process, I also decided to like leave the corporate world and pursue entrepreneurship, which was pretty amazing. So here's what I will like tell you girls, like my 30s, I felt like was a rebirth of who I've always been, but she got kind of lost in what I thought life was supposed to be and how I was supposed to like, show up and live it. And so now at 45, I can tell you, like, I've never been happier. I've never, I mean, granted, there's still things, that I'm always working on, but I feel like, when life deals you some crap, it could be a moment though, it's happening for you so that this better version of you kind of comes out the other side, even though you don't really feel like that when you're in it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I'm thinking about, you're in your early 30s, 2 kids, you have this idea. I can relate to the idea of, this is how life is supposed to look. I'm supposed to get married and have kids and things. And now you're in your early 30s and you're going through this divorce. Did you have support around you? Do you have a lot of family around you to support you through that? Or how did that look?
It's interesting that you bring that up. So when I moved from the Boston area with my then husband to the New York area because my own parents were getting a divorce after 25 years. And his parents, I just knew like they were going to be these great grandparents that could really support us because I knew I wanted to keep working. We all like have our zone of genius and being a stay-at-home mom is definitely not a zone of genius for me, like at all. I love my kids so much, but I knew I wanted to work. Like that was important. So we made a pretty bold move to New York before we even had the kids because I knew they were going to be such an awesome support system having the kids, which played out. However, get divorced, my family's not anywhere near here. His family not liking me very much at this point, right? It was very messy in the beginning of the divorce. We're all amazing, like blended family now, including them. I mean, they are like grandparents to my 5-year-old and they're not even related. It's amazing. But in the beginning, it was, it was uncomfortable. I had some friends, but no family. And it was scary, it was scary. And so I had to rely pretty heavily on myself and who I was and what did I want and how was I going to intentionally build our life post-divorce. And when I say our life, I'm so passionate about this. My kid's dad and I, when we were getting divorced, we both, we sat down and we said, this has nothing to do with these kids. That just because it didn't work out between you and I, like we need to co-parent them like nobody. Like we're going to co-parent like bosses. Like we really like we like laid that down straight out. And to the point where it's, the advice that I give to people is stop calling that person your ex. Like when you say your ex-husband, your ex-wife, that it has a horrible connotation to it, right? It's not a pleasant term for one.
No.
2, your kids, that is their dad. He'll be their dad forever. That's the relationship now. The relationship is not your ex-husband. The relationship is your kid's dad. That's the relationship now. And so it's amazing, this mindset shift, that when you start calling him your kid's dad instead of your ex-husband, so much changes. How you look at him changes, how you're speaking to him or about him in front of your kids changes. It's a very positive term to say my kid's dad versus my ex-husband. I mean, you can just feel the difference in those two words,
Oh yeah,
right?
when you
Right?
just said it, I could feel it. And that is not anything I've ever heard before or even would have thought to think about. But they're so true, just right there and you sharing it. There is a huge energy difference in that.
Huge energy difference. And your kids are the kids are amazing. One, they're always listening, but two, they can feel things. They feel energy, like
Oh
on a
yeah.
level that we've shut down over time, but they can feel it. And so it was very important to me, and this is just like another piece of advice, is that your kids' relationship with their dad is theirs to own. It is theirs to, firm up or not. I mean, it's not your job. And so for you to be talking about, your ex-husband as their dad instead, it just gives them that ability to form whatever relationship it is they're going to have with them, versus like, oh, that's mom's ex-husband. Like, it's just, it just has a very bad negative, connotation to it. So you'll rarely ever hear me say that word. We've been divorced almost 12 years. And so the other really key thing that I would say is that, and this is hard in the beginning, because in the beginning, you have so much going on. You're feeling like life is not where it should be anymore. You're feeling like a failure. You have fear of the unknown of what's coming, in the future. You could be angry. You could have been, if you were the one leaving, you feel guilt. If you're the one that's being left, you feel pain and anger. I mean, there's a lot going on, right? And
Yeah.
I've got these kids that you're also trying to take care of. So it's hard to do this in the moment, but I share this as many times as I can with as many people that would listen, is that you have to play the long game. You have to look into the future, because, and this is hard to hear sometimes, but when you say the words I do and you take those vows and you say till death do us part, when you have kids, it really is till death do you part. You may not be married anymore, but it is till death do you part. Because I tell people to think about high school graduations, college graduations, weddings, your first grandchild. Those are amazing milestones in your kid's life and in your own life. That, how do you want to feel when you're in those moments? Do you want to feel just pure love and being proud and being in the moment and being happy for your kid graduating, or picture holding your grandchild? Like, how amazing that might be.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to have the anger and anxiety of, well, when is he showing up? And I want to visit, I'll visit in the morning and then your dad can come visit in the afternoon at the hospital. And like, oh, like, no, we don't want to have that anger and anxiety and, frustration 20 years down the road. So if you can try to think further ahead of how you want your life to play out, and those milestone moments can really help crystallize what I'm talking about here, not the day to day, but these milestone moments, like becoming a grandparent. You want to, as best you can, to be intentional about how you're treating that other person. Even if they're like, not the greatest person, you can still be the best version of you. Show your kids how you can show up even when someone maybe isn't treating you the best, and let them see that. They're watching. So be intentional. Know that this person is probably going to be in your life for a long, long time and through some of your biggest moments of life, and try to figure out how you're going to be able to show up with love, peace, calm, and work on that. Does that make sense?
That makes so much sense. And I think thank you for sharing that, because that is so important. That's such a vital message that needs to get out to those who are in that stuff right now. And so important. I grew up in a home that when I was 14, my parents divorced, and it was messy. And today it's still not good. And that leaves such imprints on your kids, in their brain and on their hearts. And having to choose between mom and dad is not a fun place to be. And that has repercussions further than I think we all realize.
Oh yeah. I mean, it totally, like I have the chills you saying that, because it's like, you know, it can manifest itself in so many ways because it became imprinted in your subconscious, you know, and it creeps up in lots of different ways. And I know there's probably some listening that might even be angry or frustrated with what I'm sharing because you're like, well, you don't know how hurt I am or what I've been through. And I will just say this, trust me. I mean, there were times where I was sitting on the floor of the kitchen of the house I was renting, because I moved out of my beautiful 4,000 square foot home into, you know, we rented, we had to like move. I mean, you know, we took steps back in our lives through this divorce, you know, and sitting on the kitchen floor, back against the refrigerator, sobbing, like just sobbing, like seeing a little 2-year-old having gotten out of bed and came around the corner, and I'm trying to wipe my tears because I don't want them to see me crying. Like I have been there, and it sucks. Okay. It's like, it is not fun. But I will tell you that working through having an intentional long game has helped me every step of the way, because let me tell you, now the kids are teenagers, their dad and we have to collaborate more now than we ever did when they were 4 and 2, 5 and 7, you know, 10 and 8. Because now they want to go to parties. There are things they want to do like that, like this is all new for us. Like, what do you let a 16-year-old girl do and not do, you know? And like, it's crazy. So I love that we worked really hard. You have to swallow a lot of stuff sometimes. You have to let things go, like the little things go, the things that frustrate you, anger you, that you want to blow up at him for. Like you try, like I cannot tell you how much mental discipline it has taken over these 12 years to stay the course. And every once in a while we'll have an argument, believe me, but like we always bring it back to that point. And I do think this, I will say this, one person has to take the lead. Okay. It was definitely me, you know, I took the lead. So, you know, if he was upset with me about something, I tried to take the lead in the bigger way. Cause I've just held on to this vision of like, if I had it my way, like we'd all be going on vacations together. Cause I don't care. Like it's great. Like, let's do it. Like he's been with the same person for 8 or 9 years. They're about to get married. I've been with my now husband just a year longer than them. We've been together like 10 years. And so we're all like, we all know each other inside and out, you know, and we've worked at that. Is it perfect? No, but we all have this vision of knowing that we're actually all going to be in each other's lives forever.
Yeah. Like, you don't have a choice. You're all going to be, you don't have a choice. And you could go on for years with this stuff if you want to, or you can choose something different.
Yes.
You seek outside help.
So for me, I did not. I mean, I've always been into personal development though. So even before I went down the entrepreneur journey, which the entrepreneur journey will like literally, it's like personal development by fire, you know, and the growth and all of that. But I've always been into personal development. And so books, and I found podcasts and all of those things, like podcasts later, because they weren't out, believe it or not, when I was getting divorced. It's like, they're still that new. Yeah. But, and friends, like I really self-care, friendships, and then personal development really were the 3 big things that helped me through almost every phase, honestly, of life, you know, that you go through. Yeah. You know, and I think that whatever works for you is the right thing. You know, it could be seeing a therapist. It could be being part of a support group. It could be, you know, some of the things that I just mentioned, you know, but like, don't bury it.
Don't bury it. Yeah. And you can't do it alone. You just can't. You to find those people that you can rely on and be with, who can lift you up when you're in those sobbing moments and you're, you know, your world is falling apart. and
Yes.
find those people. And nowadays there are just so many resources at our fingertips. How on those days where you do want to take the phone and throw it across the room, or pick up the phone and send that text that is not very nice, there are ways to, alleviate that, and I love it because I heard you say, you get to be angry, have your anger, don't bury it. You get to have all these things as well. However, you have choices. And when there's kids involved, those choices are so much more important.
100%. And to anyone listening that, is either going through a divorce and you have young kids, I was so worried for them, like what would life be like for them? And one of the hardest things I have ever had to do was to totally agree to 50-50 custody. You know how hard that is when you have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old as a mom? But I knew, and it's so funny. So their dad and we live 2 miles apart right now. Like we on purpose, and trust me, the first thing I wanted to do, I wanted to run back to Boston. When we were getting divorced, I wanted to just pack up the kids and go home to where my family was. But I wasn't going to have a court fight and no, absolutely not. Like the vision that was not going to fit the vision. So eventually I'm going to head back to Boston probably someday, but they're 16 and 14. Life goes by real fast. My daughter is a junior. She goes to college in, a year and a half. My son, he's 2 years behind her on that. And then the door is open. My now husband and our 5-year-old, we can go wherever we want or do whatever we want. We're not tied to being 2 miles away from their dad anymore. But I'm so glad we chose to do that. And so where I was going with it is that it was the hardest thing in the world to give up bath time and bedtime and our routines that we had with the kids, every night, I sobbed on the nights in the beginning when I didn't have them. And then what I started to do, this just might be good advice for anyone that's listening that might be in a situation like that, because I know it's really, really hard, is on the days where I didn't have the kids, that is when I did all the grocery shopping. It's when I made sure I went to the gym. It's when I planned girls' night out. It's when I did some projects or things that I wanted to do around the house or whatever. My kid's dad did the same thing. So these kids, they got so much attention because when they were with him, they weren't doing grocery shopping. They weren't doing all the mundane tasks like laundry and all the things that we do. I think about my 5-year-old right now, and I feel like my other kids got more of me half-time than this poor kid gets full-time. I really feel like that. It's crazy because I did all that other stuff. And so I planned a lot of fun stuff with them, and their dad did the same thing. And, as they've gotten older and I've checked in with them, we do check in with them. We work with them on what the calendar looks like because they've both decided they don't want to be more than 2 days apart from either of us. So we have flopped every 2 days for 11 years, 12 years.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's crazy. My daughter's getting her license in a few months, and she can then decide, she flips all over now, which is fun. But with their sports and everything else they've got going on, I see them every single day. There's not a day that goes by that I don't see them, but they're just not sleeping at my house, And so when I think back to crying when they were 4 and 2, because I wasn't going to see them half the time, but to see where we've come over 12 years and how special it is, it's because we worked through and made the choice to put them first before our own feelings and to really create a family. It's just an alternative family, honestly.
Yeah. How cool. You guys have managed to find a way that really works for you and, turn something that could have been just really ugly for a long time into something that sounds so beautiful and easy. Well, not easy, but simple.
Well, and you know what's interesting, Katrina, is that my kid's dad and I would often hear from people, "Oh my God, you guys are so lucky. Oh, you're so lucky. You're so lucky." And I'm like, lucky? We worked really hard. We still work really hard at this. And there are challenges with our spouses because they're step parents. Being a step parent, I think, is one of the most challenging roles there is out there. So anyone that is a step parent, like I bow down to you. I just give you a lot of credit. You're a step parent, a stepmom. It is super hard. It's probably the number one thing that my husband and I argue about is about the two kids. The little guy that's ours, we rarely ever argue about. But when it comes to the other two, there's disagreements about things, and that is, the hardest job. So it's not luck. It's a lot of work. It's still ongoing. I mean, we're not done yet, right? We're in this together forever, like till death do we part. Like we hopefully have a long way to go before that happens.
There's weddings and grandkids to come. So
exactly. But like I think about, like, we had my daughter 16, her sweet 16 this summer, and every party we've ever had for the kids, like, because of the work that we've done, we're all here. We're all together at the party. Often they end up their dad and his fiance they're the last ones to leave. They're hanging out with us. We're drinking some wine, chilling, laughing. It's great. But it took work and deliberate action and choices to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. You're just making me smile from the inside out, and just, there's so much hope in that. And because it makes me reflect on the situation I grew up in and think, wow, if things could have been differently, not dwell on it at all, but it gives me hope that there's other way for other parents, and not every kid has to necessarily go through some of the things that I went to. And then I think about, while my stepdaughter's mom and husband were never married, but just that co-parenting relationship and how far that's come. And, Haley's 13 now, and we're meandering into that mode of life where there's going to have to be more conversation between mom and dad and more working that stuff out. So I just love that. I kind of want to take it back to, you talked about, you're in your rebirthing into who you always were. So expand a little bit more on that, and, refining yourself. I think many of us get lost because we have that idea, I've got to be married by a certain age, have kids, get the job, go to school, all of the things. And we lose what that magic is inside of ourselves from when we're kids and what our big vision is.
Oh, it's like grinning as you say that, because like, how you can sometimes just visualize your life and like almost like in compartments, like kind of like the 0 to 10, the 10 to 20, the 20 to 30, kind of in these decades, right? When I think about really even 0 to 20, like pretty much, from the time I was born into my college years, like I was a dreamer. I used to journal. I mean, I journaled back in the day. Okay. Journaling is like all the thing now, but like my dad journaled. I had a dad that journals. He's always been, a philosopher of sorts. And that's how I was. I was a dreamer. I had big plans for myself. Those were always changing. You'll laugh at this, but like before we had things like Pinterest and like the internet, I had this almost like a physical Pinterest board. I had this booklet. I actually still have it. My mom had saved it. It's in like a bag. I have it in my basement. And it's all magazine clippings of things that inspired me, words that inspired me, people, style. I've always loved style and fashion and beauty and like just all these things, and sports. And I've always loved like fierce women that aren't afraid to show up. And if you look through that book, it's like all the things that I feel right now. But in between the time that I left college to like, I would say my mid 30s, got lost. It kind of got snuffed out with the what I should be doing. That should word. I hate that should word, right?
Like shouldn't on yourself. Yeah.
Oh, should. Well, I should do this and I should do this and I should do this. And so all those shoulds got in the way of who that girl was. And it's so fascinating because when I think about it now, once I went through the IVF and had my 5-year-old, right after that is really when everything started to really shift for me. My eyes just opened up and I knew I wanted more. My personal life had gotten to a spot that I wanted to be in, but my work and fulfillment and my identity of like, just what I wanted to achieve in my life, that still hadn't happened quite yet. So that was kind of like the end of my 30s, starting to really get into that. And now, I'm at 45. I am an entrepreneur, total dreamer, journal. I have 3 different businesses, one of which is in the fashion, beauty space, which is something I've always loved. I've always said I was going to write a book. Like my whole life, I thought I was going to write a book, and I definitely will. But podcasting became like my alternative, because I kept saying, well, I have so much to say. I got to get that book out. I got to get that book out. Because I actually, you'll laugh. You'll laugh, because you've opened a can of worms with me talking about who I was as a little kid and who I'm being now. I actually took, remember those old golden books, like those thin books with the little golden edge, the golden books, I think that's what they're called. Just like a story that you would read when you were a kid. I repapered it. Like a cover. I took all the pages out and I repapered a cover, and I put the story of my life and drew like pictures. I was 8. Okay. 8 years old. And like, I still have that book too. And it's hysterical, because it's like, how much happened by 8? Not much in my life. Right. So, but like, I like wrote out this book. And so I laugh, because like, I plan to have a book, like that's going to happen. But the podcast, and when that opened up, and I was like, wait a minute, I can get my words out. The words that'll eventually be on paper, I can put out there now in, people's earbuds. Like, oh, we're doing that. So I just look at all these different things that I've jumped into, in the last 5 years, and they all tie back to breadcrumbs that were there back in those early years. Isn't it amazing? Because I can open again.
Yes. I shared that on my first episode, how this podcast has been about 25 years-ish in the making. I had a recorder that I got for Christmas, and I went around and I interviewed my family members, and I made them say hi. And I have tapes somewhere of my friends and I doing the same thing. And it's just like, it's so funny how you said that. It points right back. That just like, gets me all 8-year-old feeling giddy type of feel.
Exactly. I love that. But you know what? That's what we have to tap back into.
Yes.
So if anyone listening is like, like just take some time, like get up earlier in the morning and just sit there and try to tap back into that person. Like, who were you in those first 10 years of life, those first 15 years of life? Like, what lit you up? What, if you think back, and you'll probably start smiling, hopefully, of memories, of good memories, of things that you did or things that you loved, those could be clues for things that you should maybe open up again to, because we close off because we get into that should race.
Yeah. I often ask people, especially women, mamas, I ask them, so what did you want to be when you grew up? What did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be everything. That was the crazy thing.
An entrepreneur.
I had the shiny object syndrome, literally back in the day. It changed by the day. But that's exactly it. Like that's what it was showing me, is that I love a lot of things, and I shouldn't tie myself down to one thing.
We make that is made wrong early on. You need to pick one thing, and it has to look a certain way. And I think, we lose that. And I asked them too, like, what happened between what you wanted to be then and what you are now? Because now I see you doing something you don't love, you hate it. It doesn't bring you any purpose. It tires you out. It doesn't bring you a lot of money either. So what happened? And, how can we shift that for you? How can we get you back to what it is you love? And, oftentimes we hear, well, this is for my family. This is for my kids. I need to be this is what needs to come first. So how do you put yourself back first? Because we're mommies, and it is very easy to go into, my kids come first, and they're absolutely important, but mom's got to be first. We have to fill ourselves up first.
Okay, I get fired up about this point. So I'll kind of share a perspective and a mindset, and then I'll kind of share tactically, like how you can, make sure that you are blocking the time and that kind of thing. So mindset wise, here's what I would say. If you lose yourself completely and give everything that you have just to your kids, we think that that's being a good mom. And we think that, they're getting the best of us by doing that. But it's not the case, because, and I'm going to offer two perspectives on this. One, if you have, let's look at let's say you have a son. Do you want your son to grow up and leave the nest, get married, and his poor wife, his expectations are, well, you're going to stay home, or you're going to, be the primary. And I, give all that you can to the kids, because that's what my mom did. That's what I saw. Right. And they expect that of their wife. Or if you have a daughter, do you want her to grow up and think that in order to be a good mom, she has to do it the way you did, where she has to give everything of herself to her kids? You would not want that for either one of them. You wouldn't. So why are you doing it? One, if you can't do it for your own self, do it for them, meaning show them that you can be more than mommy. Show them that, and that can be a lot of different things. You could be a stay-at-home mom and have hobbies or self-care, or, you exercise, or maybe you have some kind of hobby. Maybe you make sure you're seeing your friends, because that is super important, to be seeing your friends and doing girls' nights. It doesn't matter what it is. I don't necessarily mean it has to be like a side hustle or an entrepreneurship thing. It could be whatever it is, but something. They need that example that it's okay, especially for our daughters, like that it's permission to be able to do multiple things, for one. The second thing on the mindset is that I think that when we give everything to our kids like that, we actually often aren't happy. And if we're not happy, that we talked about that energy earlier, our kids can feel that energy. They can feel that energy when you're not happy. And that's negative. It's just this negative energy, and often we can get snappy. We lose our patience. We think we're showing up and giving everything we have to them, but then it backlashes, because we end up doing things that, like I said, like losing patience, yelling, things that we don't want to do. Versus if you're fueling yourself with some self-care, however that is, or you're working on that hobby or side business and it's giving you energy, you show up differently with your kids. You show up happier. And so how do you do it? How do you find the time? I'm a big fan of, like, whether it's a paper calendar or it's your phone calendar, you time block everything, like everything. And then here's the key thing. Once it's on there, you cannot renegotiate with yourself, right? So if you put down 9 to 10, go for that run or go to spin class or work on your business, when it gets to be 9 o'clock, you can't say, well, I don't really feel like it right now.
Yeah.
When you go off of how you feel in the moment, you'll actually never achieve great things in life. You have to say, you know what? Nope, I put that on there. And you have to believe in yourself to show up and do what you say you're going to do. And when you do that, two things happen. One, you get the thing done and you feel great. But two, you start to believe in yourself that you will do what you say you're going to do. And you schedule then everything in that way. You schedule in your self-care. You schedule in solid quality time with your kids, not just the time that you're making lunches, making the dinner, doing all the stuff that we do as moms, but like quality time with the kids. You can schedule in, time to work on your business. Sometimes it's getting up earlier than the kids. Sometimes it's staying up later. It depends on, what your family life is like. But time blocking and then like committing to whatever you put in the calendar, that's what you're going to do. Because I heard this once. I'm a certified life coach, and in my life coach training, my instructor, she said that our brain is making decisions all day long, constantly. Decisions. I mean, little to big. It's exhausting. And when we renegotiate decisions over and over and over again of things we were going to do, like just think about going to the gym. How many listening, and I've done this 1,000 times too, where you said you were going to go to the gym at 9, it gets to be 9, you're like, I don't know. I don't really feel like going to the gym right now. And then you do all this rationalization, all these things. You know how much time and energy we waste renegotiating with ourselves, making decisions multiple times. Her whole philosophy is if you can get into the practice of committing to what you say you're going to do on your calendar, and you make the decision once. And she recommends, it's kind of fun. I do this not necessarily like every single week, but it's a great thing to do. Where either Sunday night or Monday morning, you map out your whole week with the top priority things you want to make sure you have scheduled. So whether it's working out, time with the kids, working on your business, and you plan it out. So you're making all those decisions once. And then when you get to that on your calendar, you just do it. She said your life frees up because you waste so much energy renegotiating.
Now I know why I'm so tired all the time.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
I
true.
love this. Yeah.
Yeah. And you don't even realize it until like someone tells you, you're like, oh my God, that is totally what's happening in my life right now, you know? And the same is true, like mindset wise. Let's say you've planned the time to work on your business. Don't be thinking about, oh, I really should be doing this something with my kids right now. Nope.
Yeah.
Focus on your business. And if you were with your kids, forget about your business or working out or whatever else it was. Like really try to be present. And this is like, you know, we're very used to the idea of working out our bodies. We're not so used to the idea of working out our brains, but this is mental exercises. Like these are mental, you know, mindset type of work that you have to practice. It's not going to happen overnight. You have to kind of, just like you're learning to play the guitar or learning to, you know, do anything, you have to do it over and over again, and you're going to mess up along the way. But if you've got these principles that you're trying to work towards, you know, that time blocking, the protecting your calendar, doing what you said you're going to do, and then being present in the moment of what you said you were going to do. If you constantly are working towards that, life starts to flow a little easier.
Yeah.
And you start to feel better. Your energy is better. You have less stress and have more patience too.
I love that. Those are such good tips. Really good tips. And I totally relate to the, you know, commit to what you say you're doing, because, you know, that workout time comes and it's, well, I need to do this still, or I need to do that still. So that was super helpful. Such good information. Such good information. So before we wrap this up, what are some of your favorite self-care practices?
Oh boy. Okay. So I love to listen. I know this, I don't know if this is self-care. It is for me. I love to listen to podcasts. I love to go for a walk and listen to podcasts. I feel like I need, especially being an entrepreneur, I don't have a boss that's sitting there telling me like I've got to get certain things done. Like I have to do it myself, and I have to keep motivated. And so I really love to have inspiration and motivation in my brain through earbuds listening to podcasts. So I love that. You know, the other piece of self-care that is so important to me is, and it's, I kind of going to reiterate myself, but it is that time blocking, because there are things I love. I love to work on my business. Working in my business and on my business is not a chore for me. I love it so much that I have to be careful, because I'll burn out because I want to keep working on it, you know? So self-care is also like limiting yourself on time blocking and making sure that you are, you know, having a mix of things that you're doing in your life, because I could like just zero in and just do just the business stuff because I love it so much. But eventually you'll burn out with that.
Yeah.
Date nights with my husband, we really try to, you know, we aim for once a week. It's not always that by any means, but we aim for a couple of times a month where we've gotten a sitter and we're going out. Like we need to refuel. I need to reconnect with him. So that's important. Same thing with girls' night outs. It's funny how this all comes back to the calendar. Like being intentional, scheduling things in, and then doing what you said you're going to do. Because there are nights like where I'll have scheduled a girls' night out, and back to the, I don't know, I kind of like, I have other things I want to do. I don't really feel like getting dressed. I just want to stay in my pajamas, you know?
Yeah.
But like forcing yourself to do things you said you were going to, like can give you such energy and life, even when you don't feel like doing it. So those kinds of things are really important to me. And then eating, I try to eat healthy too, because one thing I've learned is that when you want to show up big in this world and you want to show up and do big things, you've got to be physically able to do them, you know? And mentally. So I really do, like, I don't do it all the time and I totally mess up often, believe me, but I've noticed we're all on a journey. Like nothing's perfect,
Right.
but I've noticed that like if I'm taking better care of myself with how I'm eating and moving my body, I show up better in my life too.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally 1000% agree with that. And I asked you that just because I think, self-care looks a little bit different for everybody, and we can get confused as to what self-care actually is. So I appreciate you sharing that. Is there anything else that's burning in your heart that you wanted to share with before we go?
Yes. One big thing, because I hear it over and over and over again from moms that I work with. I do too. People are so afraid of doing something outside their comfort zone because they're afraid of what someone else is going to think about them. And whether it's a network marketing business, some other side hustle, maybe there's a blog they've always wanted to start, or, maybe you've always wanted to run a marathon, or whatever it is, I find that people don't start because one, they don't have the kind of the faith or confidence in themselves. That's totally normal. And they also are worried what other people are going to think. And I would just leave you with this. Like, when you push past your fear and you try something you've never tried before, it's almost always an amazing thing. Even if you fail at whatever it is, you've learned so much and you've become a different version of you, a better version of you. And if there is anyone out there that is going to judge you on something that you're trying to do, they're not your people. And if you're 85 and looking back, do you want to look back and think, oh my God, I can't believe I didn't write that book or start that podcast or do that blog because I was worried of what my Aunt Jane was going to think or what the girl down the street was going to think? Like, no, you would never want that for yourself at 85. Like, so just do it. Get past that fear. And I'm sure both Katrina and I will tell you, we promise you, it's better on the other side of that fear. You just gotta do it anyway.
It so is. Oh my gosh. Yes. Yes. Thank you seriously so much for being here. I could sit here and talk to you all day.
I know, me too.
I just could go on and on. You have such an amazing story. You have so much good information, and your heart is just so beautiful. And I so appreciated this time with you. Thank you so much.
Oh, same here. And thank you for what you're doing. And I'm so excited to keep watching you just grow and shine. And I love this podcast. So thank you so much for having me on it.
Absolutely. Hi, friends. If you enjoyed this episode of the Just As We Are podcast, it would mean so much to me if you would head on over to iTunes and leave me a 5-star review. Take a screenshot of today's episode and tag me at Katrina Lelly on your social media. If you haven't already, head on over to the Just As We Are podcast community on Facebook and hit join, where you will get to join more of the Just As We Are tribe. And remember that no matter where you are on your journey, you are completely whole and loved just as you are.